Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from December 18th to the 24th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it, as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. And then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. Try to think of these videos as a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the U.S. cannabis industry, identify top U.S. MSOs or Canadian LPs that you think will be worth more in the future than they are now based on their current market caps, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so, as we patiently wait for the DEA to respond to HHS's apparently scientific recommendation made back in August. And when we just try to verify whether HHS actually followed the science by requesting that document through the Freedom of Information Act, they give us back a redacted document. So the bastards do not want to make it easy, so I apologize, folks, for adding fuel to the fire with more and more speculation, but that's all we can do. All we can hope for is really a Christmas miracle, but Chris Roberts, who writes for MJ Biz Daily, says that he talked to a couple people in a position to know, and they have confirmed they have no fucking idea either. And they're basically saying that they've heard what they think could be true based on talking to people that they think are in a position to know. And so the good news that came out of yesterday's news, though, apparently the pardons for certain offenses, is that if you were busted for cannabis by U.S. Park Police, and I believe this applies to any national park or certain type of land, but we'll get to that in a moment, you are pardoned. So hey, that's a huge victory. But at the same time, even Last Prisoner Project Sarah Gersten has no clue when any rescheduling announcement might be coming. And so I'll put this link to the White House for the announcement, but it's just wanted to share that many mainstream outlets picked this up and ran with it, so that's the best thing we could have hoped for. On Friday, obviously, as Biden issues pardon for certain cannabis offenses, and then commuting the sentences of 11 people convicted of nonviolent drug offenses. I have not looked into the details of those, but I just recall last time when Biden made these clemency announcements, they were violent drug offenders, or maybe people that should not have gotten the leniency they got. And so, again, wanted to just highlight what's happening right now. Fortunately, these new pardons target additional offenses of simple possession, which include offenses related to use and possession on certain federal lands, which I believe includes national parks, which provisions weren't covered at last year's proclamation. And so I think that is a huge victory, and hopefully some foreplay to what's coming next week. You know, an announcement maybe coming on Christmas that gets swept under the rug so the critics can't be too harsh, and that would be a miracle. But all this to highlight, we don't know exactly how many people would be affected by these new pardons, which leads me to believe that the Biden admin doesn't actually know. That's why they can only provide that much. But highlighting is that HHS recommended in August that the DEA ease cannabis restrictions by moving it to Schedule 3 drug, which would be a significant change to federal drug policy. Now, why would HHS even say that in the headlines and then the redacted documents say something different, right? So there's many reasons for us to believe we're still going to get Schedule 3. It's just a matter of when, not if, does the announcement come, as the DEA still boneheads that are completely backwards. And of course, you can pause to read the rest, and as always, all the links will be in the comments. And so just sharing as The Hill and many other mainstream outlets did blast this on Friday, which we love to see as good press for cannabis. Biden to pardon certain cannabis offenses, commute sentences of 11 nonviolent drug offenders. So again, more to pause here if you're interested in reading The Hill's perspective on it. Otherwise, get this one from AP, as Biden pardons thousands convicted of cannabis charges on federal lands and in Washington. Do we even know that when NBC says it was not immediately clear how many people would be affected by the new pardons? Pretty bold headline, AP. And so just looking into some of the details, the categorical pardon builds on a similar round issue just before the 2022 midterm elections that pardoned thousands convicted of simple possession on federal lands eligible. And so is this actually not even new, but it's building off of last year? Friday's actions broadens the criminal offenses covered by the pardon. Okay, so they claim. Still don't know how they can justify saying that thousands have actually been pardoned when, well, no one was freed from prison under last year's actions, but the pardons were meant to help thousands overcome obstacles to renting a home or finding a job, while similarly, no federal prisoners are eligible for release as a result of Friday's pardon. And so, hella confusing, right? Did he actually do anything? And so, from my understanding, you have been pardoned if you've consumed cannabis on a national park or any federal grounds. Now, please let me know in the comments if that's wrong or not. With some great news like this, you'd think the cannabis plant might get a little bit of love from CNN or Fox. Think again as reality sets in. DEA effectively outs themselves as having their heads so far up their asses that they are run by smart approaches against marijuana. So time to abolish them. As DEA warns Georgia to cancel plans to become first state to allow pharmacies to sell medical cannabis. Not only is the DEA actively going against the recent Garland memo, which says that they cannot legally do this, so that's fucked up, the DEA is choosing to do this instead of their job to, provide a safe and non-addictive medicinal alternative and follow HHS's scientific recommendation. You cannot make this shit up. And so they don't even mention anything about the Garland memo that says that legally the DEA can't do this. Pathetic journalism, obviously, by Fox. We can't expect anything less. But Fox says it right here. The DEA memo was published online by the group Smart Approaches to Cannabis, run by Kevin Sabat. And if you have a brain on Twitter and you've called that clown out, he's blocked you because he is a fake doctor that is funded by the pharmaceutical industry to just continue this. And hey, can't make this shit up, folks. Full link in the comments if you want to go through that, but that's what we're up against. Now, here's the reality. Do the right thing. Thank you for showing this timely quote because it highlights why the DEA has been in the wrong for 70 years and why it's in their best interest to correct that wrong sooner than later. As show this quote to anyone who still believes that cannabis should remain illegal. And this is a quote from someone, John Ehrlichman, I believe, who worked for the White House. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. You understand what I'm saying? Like, they admit this. We know this. And not only is this on-the-record testimony from a former assistant to the president during the Nixon administration, it's crazy that Dems don't want to acknowledge that Biden was the architect of the 94 crime bill. And it was because of Biden that the prison rates increased so much, and there are still so many in there today. How they can overlook that doesn't make any sense. But to continue, we know we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with cannabis, the blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. And this highlights how powerful propaganda is when the message just repeats, right? Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. He concluded, according to Baum, who I believe interviewed John Ehrlichman to get this quote, and John Ehrlichman was assistant to the president for domestic affairs under President Richard Nixon. And so if you were to Google something along the lines of John Ehrlichman Nixon quote, just if you're not aware of this, it's fascinating and there are a lot of headlines. Even CNN has reported on this fact, though this is from 2016. And so Lord knows what happened from then until now, but all it makes me think of is that recent stat, which I imagine has probably increased over the last few years, but 75% of advertising on Fox and CNN comes from Big Pharma, right? And we know that Big Pharma doesn't like cannabis. They're likely not doing everything in their power to keep cannabis illegal because, cannabis is still able to proliferate, but they clearly don't like it. But even worse for wear is just the fact that the DEA and Sam seem to be one, and they seem to have a massive grip on Fox, CNN, and some of these other outlets. So what that means, I don't know. But with that, we did get another announcement from Schmuck, which I won't even share because fuck that guy. Can't anymore, so thank you, Brady Cobb, for summarizing. But wait, there's more. Step right up, folks. We do not care what this man has to say. We are just waiting for the DEA to either work in the best interest of America or give more reasons for us to want to abolish them sooner than later. But the great news, in states that are doing it right, rec use cannabis sales become Missouri's newest billion-dollar industry in 2023. From KCTV5, you'll love to see it. And so highlighting $1.2 billion worth of cannabis in 2023 thus far in the first 11 months. That's about 4 million sales a day it equates to. And so it began February 3rd, 2023 after voters passed the amendment. And they estimate sales will top 1.3 billion despite only selling for 11 months this year. And so I tried to find the specific data for the last few months, did not find it, but more here if you wanted to pause to read, and I will share that once we get it. But this is a little graph visual just to highlight from December 2022 to June 2023. So it doesn't include from June 2023, say until November or December, or now obviously, but highlights the trajectory and what will happen when more states obviously end cannabis prohibition and do it in the right way like Missouri. And so with that from the Dales Report, I wanted to share this in an informative segment with Curaleaf Executive Chair Boris Jordan. Talks about Curaleaf's founding IPO and how institutional investors were forced to divest due to regulatory factors, which was Jeff Sessions rescinding the Cole memo, unfortunately, and the process of re-educating these same institutions as reform returns. And so could we see a 2018 and 2021 combined into a new 2024-2025 wave? Obviously, that's what we're all here for, and that's the hope. We don't know, just thinking out loud, but you can watch this clip.
What is the plan of action? Is it all going out there, re-educating, but are you finding that there is a lot of institutions that have not been paying attention to the space for a period of time, considering what's been happening and how the stocks have been hit so hard?
Yes, I think that there's virtually been no new money that's entered the space in almost 2 years. I think the last flurry of new money came in on the back of the Biden victory. And since then, I don't think there's been any new money, mainly an exodus of capital. But the big capital actually exited before Biden became president because they exited after Jeff Sessions rescinded the Cole memo.
Right.
And so Curaleaf, I've said this many times, not to repeat myself, but 96% of Curaleaf's IPO is large institutional investors. 9 months after we went public, we had 58,000 retail investors and no institutions virtually. So all the major institutions had to exit the stock, the most public, of course, being BlackRock, who bought in the IPO and then exited because they couldn't hold the stock due to custody issues.
Right. You see BlackRock getting back in?
Listen, I think we're going to start talking to all of them, re-educating all of them. I don't see a reason why not.
Yeah.
The barrier was custody, nothing else.
Yeah.
Well, and if the focus is social justice,
with this uplist, then I don't see why not. But I do think they're going to look at the fundamentals in the industry. This is going to be real work. We have to get out there and start educating people.
Yeah, and I just mean for the ESG communists that Larry Fink, the head of BlackRock, is, cannabis should be a no-brainer for them because, I mean, it plays into the social justice narrative, but it actually does change things for the greater good, which is the irony. Anyways, I digress. As we got some good news out of Florida, as Marijuana Moment shares, Florida GOP Senator files medical cannabis industry tax relief bill as Florida 280E workaround. And so this is huge because Florida joins some of the states where obviously the lawmakers in the states are choosing to work for the industries and the American people over, unfortunately, some old outdated ideologies. And so Florida could be getting tax relief, which would be massive, obviously, for Trulieve and all the MSOs in the state. And so the legislation filed last week would make it easier for, obviously, MSOs in Florida to keep a lot more of their profits and not pay their taxes to the federal government predatorily like is currently happening. And so the bill was filed. I'll obviously update you as things move along, but I think that's all we know as for now. So link in the comments if you want to go through that. While this did come out, as Marijuana Moment shares, Florida initiative to legalize medical cannabis home cultivation won't appear on the 2024 ballot. That's very unfortunate. Now, who's really to blame for this? If you read into it, the organizer of a prospective Florida ballot initiative to legalize home cultivation of medical cannabis by patients has withdrawn the proposal, explaining that the campaign raised barely more than $4,000 and couldn't cover costs associated with trying to qualify the measure. I'm sorry, but whoever tried to run this was just not the person for the job. If you can only raise $4,000 for home grow, Mariah Barnhart, sorry, but you're not the person to get this shit done. And so that really sucks. I mean, obviously you could say, well, why didn't Trulieve help out and give? I know Trulieve supported this. Trulieve obviously spent a lot of money to even get this on the ballot, so to want them to cough up more and more for home cultivation. Again, there are more people in Florida than just Trulieve. You can go ask anyone else for the money. So I just want to say that anyone that's blaming MSOs for this, which is the easy thing to do if you're lazy, and you know that Tom framed the story to try and make Trulieve the culprit, but it's way more complicated, as despite some volunteer signature gathering efforts, including at some state licensed dispensaries, she would be unable to pay the necessary fees to have those signatures validated by state officials. And so more it seems like the policy process is a little bit too expensive for the average person to try and get anything done, highlighting why it's not usually an average person. It's bigger organizations. So again, how could there just not have been a bigger effort behind this? Kind of want to blame the citizens of Florida and not necessarily the MSOs that are, again, providing a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative. And so more here if you wanted to pause to read, but like just to highlight, proponents of the medical home grow measure were largely relying on volunteers at clinics, dispensaries, and more sympathetic businesses to gather signatures. Barnhart told Marijuana Moment in September, shortly after the signature gathering campaign began. By January, we hope to get 1 million signatures. That's the big goal. If we have 200 locations statewide, getting 1,000 a month at each, we could have 1 million by the end of the year. According to the most recent fundraising numbers, however, the campaign has collected just this much since September. So again, not very good at fundraising, but they don't highlight how many signatures she ended up with. And so, I mean, hey, if you only have 10,000 signatures or 50,000 or 100,000, you just need a bigger team. It just wasn't done right. And so it just doesn't, it says no company. Yeah, again, we're not looking about the money. How many signatures did they end up getting in the end? Doesn't end up saying. Right? billion-dollar companies and conglomerates are the only people who can have a say in Florida law. There are other billionaires, millionaires, and conglomerates in Florida that are not billion-dollar companies that you could sell your initiative to that could help you with it. Just saying. It's not all Trulieve's fault. But what irks me is that they don't highlight how many signatures she ended up gathering. And maybe they did and I missed it, but please let me know in the comments, because either way, just had to highlight this because Tom doesn't seem to realize that without these MSOs, he wouldn't have a job. So talk about an ungrateful prick. If you value the price of your MSO stocks over affordable cannabis access for patients and consumers, get right the fuck out of here and never come back, Tom. Yeah, okay, Tom. Now look, this comment here from some clown who says we're okay with this, right? Tom, you need to understand this one investor does not speak for every cannabis investor, right? And that it's also possible to want success for these MSOs in the long run that are, again, helping change the status quo for the better, providing a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative, and actually saving lives, because we know dispensaries, physical locations reduce opioid overdoses. We can want their success in the long run and also have access for patients and consumers at affordable prices. We can want both of these things, Tom. And so let's hope Tom sees the light sooner than later. But Tom, if you don't, I fear if you post any more of your vegan breakfast sandwiches on Twitter, we might see you in a short movie in the Senate soon. And nobody needs any of that. And so it might be time to get some meat in you. And I'm talking beef, nothing else, folks. Come on, get your dirty minds out of here. With that, for Marijuana Moment, sports medicine doctors have favorable attitudes towards CBD and cannabis study finds, as we essentially get more evidence that cannabis ought to be removed from the World Doping Agency's list of prohibited substances sooner than later, according to a new survey of 335 doctors published this month. And so again, we love more data to highlight the ridiculousness of the current status quo. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because we know that athletes have been using cannabis favorably over pills for a very long time, but basically sharing what is here in the findings, more in the comments if you want to go through that. Well, we got this one from Marijuana Moment as well. States that legalize cannabis see enhanced college basketball recruitment study finds. And so scrolling down to highlight, obviously, if you're an athlete and you can go somewhere where cannabis is legal or where it's not, you're going to likely choose somewhere where cannabis is legal. Obviously, it's not a difficult decision. Why they need a study to point this out is beyond me, but residing in a state with legal rec cannabis use is found to improve a college basketball program's recruiting ranking versus one that doesn't legalize. Much like when you end cannabis prohibition, real estate property values go up. That's another one of the many, many, many benefits. And so with that, on to this one from Dennis Rhode as cannabis versus alcohol. We saw this featured in our last week's video, but wanted to relay as Wall Street analyst-led research shows $29 billion cannabis surge from 18 million new projected users. And so sort of just jumping off of what was featured in last week's video from the TD Cowen report, but just here for those of you that might have missed it or aren't aware that, of course, cannabis is a safer, non-addictive substitute for alcohol, but at the same time, cannabis has been shown to not only reduce dependency, but also to help wean many people off alcohol completely. And so fascinating findings, as always, more here if you wanted to pause to read. So not only does ending cannabis prohibition provide a healthier public in the sense of many turning from alcohol to something safer, this is essentially a full write-up from Marijuana Moment highlighting what these investment banks are projecting based on what we saw in the last story. And so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but it is here and the link is in the comments if you want to go through it and see what these investment bankers have to say. And so essentially one last story on that same shift, cannabis overtaking alcohol, a market shift on the horizon. This one from December 18th. Again, highlighting the same stories, but just more and more articles to take in and try and paint as accurate of a picture of what's going to come in the future based on the actual facts on the ground that are happening right now. And so, well, for the most surprising story of this past week, as even the most corrupt country in Eastern Europe could get their shit together to legalize a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative for their citizens, yet America can't. It's very embarrassing, and obviously the whole issue in Ukraine with Russia is very sad. Unfortunately, wars tend to be money laundering operations for big banks and other big industries, which is a sad reality, and so why no one should be supporting any of these foreign wars that have nothing to do with us and don't help humanity in any sort of way. All that to say is that for whatever reason, though, Ukraine obviously needing cannabis for the fact that they're sending many of their citizens to go die continuously still. And so no doubt this will help with a lot of the PTSD and trauma, but at the same time, they probably need any sort of revenue that they can, and they think this will make the money. But again, they get this done and the U.S. can't. Why can't the DEA respond to HHS's recommendation? Like, it's sad. And it would legalize it for patients with severe illnesses and post-traumatic stress disorder resulting from the nation's ongoing conflict with Russia. I just want to say that if this was for the people of Ukraine and for humanity, it wouldn't be medical cannabis. You would just be legalizing cannabis to give it to everyone in the nation that needs it to, again, just have to deal with the nonsense that this man and the U.S. government backing him have put them all through. I don't know what they've gone through. I can't imagine, but it can't be easy. Marijuana Moment. Italian cannabis activists have already collected nearly half the signatures needed to put legalization measure before Parliament. Just wanted to share this as it is another Euro update, similar to what we got out of Ukraine. And essentially, they're halfway to what they need in order to get a cannabis legalization measure on the ballot and hopefully get it removed from their narcotics list as well. But a lot from now until that actually happens. So I hope to update you when that does come around, and actually might as well scroll down to a little bit more. Full link in the comments if you want to go through this story. And then with that from Chris Norman, back to the States. And so it looks like New Jersey dispensary count now at 79 dispensaries with 3 more opening this weekend. And so these are some links to stories of new dispensaries opening. So I'll put those links in the comments. But as New Jersey, I think, reported $206 million in its most recent quarter with less than 79 dispensaries. Good to see them opening because, again, no doubt the more dispensaries you open, the more money goes into the legal market versus black market, let alone legal jobs, tax revenue, all the benefits that come with ending cannabis prohibition, and not creating a bottleneck that only has 79 stores for your 8 million people. Come on, New Jersey. So with that, good news out of New Jersey, though, Marijuana Moment, they award $5.2 million in cannabis revenue to hospital-based violence intervention programs. But again, this could be more money if they open more stores sooner than later. So stop dragging your feet, but huge win as $5.2 million going back to reduce violence and harms in hospitals, however that works. And so more here if you wanted to pause to read about how this will impact New Jersey, some free cannabis revenue. Well, we got this one out of the Big Apple from MJ Biz Daily as New York on pace for, 37 operating adult use cannabis stores by year end, Gov says. How pathetic. But think about that. New York only at 79, New York at 37, while Missouri over 100. I don't know the exact number, but already doing 1.3 billion in their first year. You cannot fuck this up so badly unless you're purposely a communist, a Marxist, or a fascist trying to suffocate any sort of private industry that is trying to operate in your state. It's the only logical conclusion. So obviously this is laughable when you know that New York has roughly 5,000 to 8,000 illicit shops at the same time. That is a fact. And so, of course, they compare New York to New Jersey, trying to make it seem less pathetic, but no, it's pathetic. And so anyways, just wanted to relay that. But the good news is that obviously all the recent news that we got in New York last week, on top of that, I believe there was a latest new submission window and they got 7,000 adult use cannabis applications estimated in New York. Well, hey, if you want to right the past wrongs, try and give out 7,000 licenses to compete with the 7,000 illicit shops. And I know you can't just do that because it requires a lot of money and know-how, and it's not like 7,000 people can know how to just operate a business like that overnight. We can wish, can't we? But anyways, highlighting that there's obviously a demand for people to want to operate a legal shop if the hoops aren't so ridiculous and if the incentive isn't, better to be an illicit operator. But anyways, that's great news. Short of 7,000 or just over 7,000 came in from this last week. In this round, regulators will issue a maximum of 1,445 permits for retailers, microbusinesses, growers, processors, and distributors. And so less than 20% of, what actually came in. But hey, highlighting again, the demand is there. People want to open a cannabis shop if it's legal. And again, if the policies from the state are not going to suffocate any sort of private industry and actually allowed to proliferate like we're seeing in Missouri and Maryland. Enough said. So more here if you want to pause to read. Full link in the comments. With that, some more stories though. Unfortunately, Marijuana Moment is all we can rely on for a lot of these stories because there's just no other outlet that really is happy to share this news. So that's the silver lining of it. But Rhode Island cannabis retailers hit 100 million milestone during first year of adult use sales. Hey, congrats Rhode Island. We love to see it. As data updated from November shows that retailers sold 105 million in legal cannabis since December 2022 when they launched for adult use. And so rec sales, which began that month, made up about 2/3 of the total, which med cannabis account for the rest. And so, of course, people just want access to this miracle plant that we still don't know so much about because cannabis is still stuck in the Schedule I classification where it never belonged in the first place. So more of a breakdown here if you wanted to pause to read about Rhode Island. Otherwise, full link is in the comments. Man, these videos are so annoying. It's just become a cesspool for ads too, this pathetic website. While Connecticut cannabis retailers can open on Christmas and New Year's, but alcohol stores must close. Hey, fair enough. To some, this might sound like an abomination, but to anyone with the head on their shoulders that knows the truth about this plant, this is a win. There will possibly be less drunk driving accidents because of this fact. And either way, just make sure you prepare ahead of time and have a very happy New Year and Merry Christmas, all y'all. But this seems to be the case in Connecticut. Not the first time, whereas actually on Thanksgiving, this was also the case. And so big ups to whoever wrote this policy and had it introduced in Connecticut because it's certainly an interesting experiment. And ultimately, I don't think it's a bad thing to try and gather data for 1 or 2 years and then be able to clearly say, hey, the amount of drunk driving incidents actually went down by this much on this day when we close this. And it could, again, lead to more potential smart policy. And it's not like alcohol is going to be closed every single day of the year. You can still go get your alcohol, just, not on the holiday emergency where you might be drunk and you're like, shit, we ran out, we got to go get it. And it can lead to something tragic. No one needs any more of that. So don't drunk drive on the holidays, folks. For Marijuana Moment, Maryland collects more than $12 million in legal cannabis taxes during first quarter of legal sales. Love to see it. Maryland, another one of the most recently launched adult use states, already crushing it. And they brought in more than $12 million during the first 3 months of legal cannabis, which kicked off July 1st. And so just to relay, sales of rec cannabis during the period totaled $158.5 million from July through September, according to Maryland Cannabis Administration. More than a third of the tax revenue, 35%, will be funneled into the state's Community Reinvestment and Repair Fund. Again, seeing good cannabis policy and legal adult use policy at work, which is intended to support communities disproportionately harmed by the impacts of past cannabis prohibition. We'd love to see it. So good effort here at Maryland, and we want to see more and more states do things like this. So if you wanted to pause to read a little bit more, they got a bit of an infographic here too. Full link is in the comments. So again, hey, we love when this is happening right and the money's being allocated in the right place. If we can, be assured of that, then we're not so opposed to taxes. But they got to be going to the right place. While Mississippi Medical Cannabis Association now serves nearly 33 million medical cannabis patients. Hey, congrats, Mississippi, providing a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative to all those in your state that need it too. Only up from here. While this one from Dennis Rudev, I guess all these pages have timed out, but just an update from last week. I did share this story, so it's nothing new, but Pennsylvania's new cannabis era. An interesting approach while we wait on lawmakers to hopefully finalize an adult use bill that they've talked about 2024, 2025. In the near term, growers to sell directly to patients, dispensaries to grow their own weed. Cool. And so hopefully this will make it easier for small mom and pop shops, single state operators and multi-state operators to get a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative to those directly who need it. So pause to read more if you're interested. And of course, we'll update you more as we learn how this plays out once it's put into practice. And then lastly, from connoisseurs.io, Florida data, it's got to be. And so I will put the updated numbers and at least the OMMU raw Florida data resource in the link in the comments as well. But Florida OMMU weekly update. As of this past week, Florida market share, we can see Trulieve, Curaleaf, Move by Verano, Surterra Wellness, and Air Wellness. While THC market share, Trulieve, Curaleaf, Air Wellness, Move, backed by Verano, and Surterra Wellness. While CBD, we got Surterra Wellness, Trulieve, Move, Curaleaf, and Air Wellness. While qualified patient count is now up to 864,662. And all of these dispensaries were opened this past week from the 18th to the 22nd. 2 more for Trulieve, 1 more for Verano. So just to bring you through the visuals, total flower sales, ounces by company. Pause to read if you're interested. Total THC sales in milligrams by company. Pause to read. Total CBD sales in milligrams by company. Pause to read. And then total dispensing locations by company. Pause to read. And so with that, Trulieve's Kim Rivers, we've got a lot of bets on the table. And obviously, we don't necessarily want to invest based off of speculation and betting. We want to try and invest when we know things are for certain. And I do my best with this channel to try and create certainty around this, but obviously it's hard because it seems like everyone else's goal is to create uncertainty around it. All that to highlight is a bit about Kim and her views going forward into 2024 here. If you wanted to pause to read, it's as of December 20th. Now, as a Trulieve shareholder, definitely a good read to go through. But Kim is optimistic that, 280E will be relieved in the new year and that Florida 2024 will be on the ballot. And so more here if you wanted to pause to read. It's quite long, though, so just going to leave it here and recommend that you grab the full link in the comments if you want to go through that. But, and obviously we've seen her put her money where their mouth is. Trulieve's put $40 million down to get that on the ballot. The good news is that the judge isn't buying the AG's shitty arguments, and so if there's no news, at least by April 1st, 2024, we know that it is making the ballot from my understanding. So just wanted to add that context from Trulieve if you're new to the channel. While we got a new episode from the Dime podcast, an interview with Charlie Bachtel, CEO of Cresco Labs. I am a shareholder of Cresco, and so I do plan to listen to this. And so thank you to the guys at the Dime for continuing on with this and continuing to put out valuable episodes. Let's hope 2024 is finally our year again after what we thought 2021 would be. Well, on to this news as Air Wellness announces opening of 2 new dispensaries in Florida, expanding their retail presence to 64 locations in Florida and 91 locations nationwide. This is along with Trulieve, Green Thumb, and Verano continuously opening up more locations in Florida because they all want to have that large footprint for when that announcement comes in, which will be huge. So more here if you want to pause to read to learn about Air. We've got another resource from the Cannabis Investing Podcast, this one with Nick Gastovich, aka Cannabis, our friend behind the deeper dives into all of the MSO's recent earnings. So thank you, Nick, for doing those. He's obviously someone with a lot of experience in the industry as an investor. 51 minutes long, everything that he talks about here. If you're interested, full link will be in the comments. Well, we've got a few more before we go. Just to highlight some firsts, at least that we got this past week. Theory Wellness to become largest employee-owned cannabis company. Very interesting, as seems like a new sort of approach. The employee stock ownership plan will also create additional value by making the company tax exempt. Say what? That seems like a big win for the Massachusetts-based Theory Wellness, as they're going to become the largest employee-owned cannabis company, and the timing with the holiday is definitely a bonus. Now, I will admit I just brought this up to share it. I have not read through the whole thing, but definitely an interesting approach if you can figure out a way to not pay 280E and obviously enrich all of your employees along the way. And so anyways, leaving this here, folks. If you're interested to pause to read, I'm definitely going to go through this a little bit more later just to try and understand it fully because, again, I apologize I didn't before. But let me bring you down here, and all I can think of just for small mom and pop shops and single state operators, this just like unlocks a new door to what they can possibly do to create a culture that ultimately benefits the employees and everyone in the company, while at the same time celebrating the fact you're changing the status quo for the better and then also not paying taxes. That is obviously the biggest thing. So full link in the comments for that story. While from Green Market Report, the best things that happened to cannabis in 2023. Here's a look back at the good news of the past year. Welcome, newbies. 4 additional states, Delaware, Maryland, Minnesota, and Ohio, and 1 U.S. territory ended cannabis prohibition. Love those trendsetters. Pardon me. Yeah, right. Not even going to try and give that guy any fucking light or credit. Just say yes. HHS apparently following the science and recommending Schedule 3. That's what all the headlines said, yet we can't confirm that based on the redacted document, but leads us to think it's coming at some point. I heart New York. But kudos to Last Prisoner Project for all the work you do in helping give ordinary Americans their lives back. As a nonprofit organization, provided 65 constituents with reentry grants, and $335,000 was directly distributed to constituents this year. Another $45,000 distributed to commissaries of constituents. Now, this leads me to question though, does that mean they've only helped 65 people? Which obviously 65 people is great, but you just think that they'd be able to help a lot more and maybe more money could be funneled into it. I don't know. But again, great work thus far. Lowered insurance premiums. Study published that yes, legal cannabis means legal costs, and increased valuation for other costs in most markets. So yes, we are all moving on up, including TerraSend and Curaleaf to the TSX, but so far that hasn't really meant much. Last few things to highlight. Canada's federal government continues to plunder the industry. How? Well, as you can see clearly here, our finance monster, Chrystia Freeland, whose grandfather was a Nazi, and her being a leading member of the Liberal Party, brought a Nazi into our parliament a few months ago, and gave him a standing ovation. And so you can deduce, using simple logic, that if she was influenced by a Nazi and she's just given a standing ovation to a Nazi, that she is a fascist, and hence you can see why, based on her actions here, reaching into Organigram's pockets and grabs 30% of their revenue, not profit, for excise tax. That is straight up extortion. And so no reason to think that this will change soon in Canada. That's the reality, which all this does is help the black market proliferate again. And so all I can say is that we want to make sure that over time, as more and more states legalize, they do it in a more American way than they do it in a more fascist or socialist way. And that's going to be a big indicator that's going to let us know, or at least be some foreshadowing into how successful any sort of legal cannabis market can be. And I think what comes with that is also cannabis being descheduled. Not like that's coming anytime soon, but more here just on some links that he provided as some context to that, and then some comments highlighting, the reality of our shitty government currently in charge in Canada. And so with that, the good news though out of Canada is that at least Alberta, our most American-like province, announces several changes to red tape regulations through a red tape reduction, they're calling it, in which Alberta has announced several changes to their retail cannabis regulations that will come into force on January 31st, 2024, allowing cannabis retailers to operate temporary sales locations at adult-only events like trade shows and festivals. So definitely a step in the right direction. Might not make a huge impact right off the bat, but again, highlighting Alberta, the province that does it right from the get-go when Canada legalized, went with the private model for the citizens. Doesn't get much better than that, at least. Now, last few things to highlight back in Canada, but this is from shortdata.ca. We do have data as of December 15th, which I wanted to try and show you in my last week's video, but couldn't. We go to largest short positions. We click on the CSE, and it seems like the shorts were back at it as of last week, and then maybe this week as well, based on what's here. Now, the good news is that each Friday we closed strong based on what we saw Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So that's promising. And I'm not going to try and act like I know how this correlates. I don't. So I'm just trying to show you that the shorts have been back at it. And if that is true, we got the best possible ending we could have got on Friday, given the rumors and the lack of DEA announcement thus far. And so last bit, folks, just to highlight, Tilray Brands, Inc. to announce second quarter 2024 financial results on January 9th, 2024. I see that and I'm like, what the hell, January? But we're already December 2023. Like, what the hell is time anymore? I don't know. But we'll be getting these the morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time of January 9th, 2024. And hopefully this will kickstart a very interesting 2024, which will see us seeing a massive green wave running into the election And now I'm just speculating again. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think I'm going to have to treat that as a sell the news event. And I'd love for you to let me know what you think in the comments about that possibility too, because it'd be good for us to brainstorm and try and actually, get this right. Obviously, we're all investing for our own situation, so make sure you do what you need to do and don't get greedy in the moment. But we'd just love a bit of a conversation in the comments. But that is it for today's episode, folks. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos. And I will catch you next week for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a very Merry Christmas, everybody, and Happy Holidays, however you celebrate.